Lieutenant Kim Mingi had been staring at the same empty screen for 6 hours when everything changed. The deep space monitoring station was usually quiet, just the hum of machines and the distant stars. Most days, nothing happened. Today was different. The signal hit her console like a punch to the gut. Static filled with screaming voices, broken words in a language the computer was struggling to translate. She leaned forward, adjusting the frequency, trying to clean up the transmission. What she heard made her blood run cold. Double quotes, please. ... Anyone. They're killing everyone. The children. ... Oh God. The children. The voice cut out, replaced by the sound of explosions and something else. Something that sounded like weapons fire, but wrong somehow. Alien. She'd never heard anything like it, but somehow she knew exactly what it was. Kim Minji's hands shook as she traced the signal back to its source. The coordinates appeared on her screen, and she felt her stomach drop. The Kepler colony, a peaceful alien settlement 3 days from human space. She'd read about them in the briefings. They were farmers, scientists, families. They had no military, no weapons, no way to defend themselves. She immediately patched the signal through to Captain Park, Ji-hoon's office. Park was the kind of officer who actually listened to his people, which was why everyone respected him. When he arrived at her station 5 minutes later, still pulling on his uniform jacket, she knew he'd felt the same urgency she had. "Play it again," he said quietly. As the broken transmission filled the communications room, Park's face grew harder with each word. Other officers gathered around, drawn by the commotion. Lieutenant Lee Sung-ho, from Tactical Analysis, pulled up star charts. Commander Han Yuri, from the Diplomatic Corps, started accessing the emergency protocols. "Sir," Han Yuri said carefully, "we should contact the Galactic Council immediately. This falls under their jurisdiction." Park nodded, but Kim Mingi could see something burning in his eyes. She'd seen that look before, during the Academy simulations. It was the look of someone who'd already made up their mind, but was going through the proper motions anyway. The response from the Galactic Council came back within an hour. Counselor Veltar's message was brief and dismissive, delivered in that smooth, condescending tone the alien diplomats always used when talking to humans. "The situation is under Council oversight. Deathworlder intervention would only escalate tensions. Our peacekeeping forces are en route and will arrive within standard diplomatic timeframes." Park stared at the message for a long moment, then pulled up the tactical display. The numbers were simple and brutal. The Council's nearest peacekeeping force was 12 days away. Even their fastest ships couldn't reach the Kepler colony in less than 8 days. The screaming voices from the transmission echoed in Kim Mingi's memory. 8 days might as well be 8 years. "Lieutenant," Park said quietly, "send word to Fleet Command. Tell them we're responding to a humanitarian crisis under Emergency Protocol 7. Kim Minji's fingers flew across her console. Emergency Protocol 7, the one that let human forces act independently when lives were at immediate risk. It was controversial, something the other species complained about constantly. They said humans were too quick to use force, too emotional, too unpredictable. Maybe they were right. "Sir," Commander Han Yuri said carefully, "the Council explicitly told us to stay out of this." Park looked at her with those burning eyes. "The Council isn't listening to people die, Commander. We are." Within 30 minutes, the station was buzzing with activity. Ships were being prepped, crews were being briefed, and the message was going out across human space. The Terran Defense Force was moving. Kim Minji watched the tactical display as human ships began converging on their position. Destroyers, cruisers, frigates, not the massive dreadnoughts that other species used, but fast, tough ships built by a species that had learned warfare in the harshest environment imaginable. As the first ships jumped to hyperspace, heading toward the Kepler colony, Kim Minji allowed herself a small smile. The aliens always underestimated humans. They thought calling them Deathworlders was an insult. They were about to learn it was a warning. The hyperspace jump always made Captain Lee Hyun-woo's stomach turn, but nothing could have prepared him for what waited on the other side. As the swirling blue tunnel of hyperspace faded away, reality hit the human fleet like a sledgehammer. The Kepler colony had been beautiful once. Lee Hyun-woo had seen the tourism videos, rolling green hills, crystal clear rivers, cities that looked like they were carved from white marble. The alien settlers had built something peaceful there. Something that reminded him of the nature preserves back on Earth. Now it looked like a nightmare. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Park Jin-woo, was the first to break the stunned silence on the bridge. "Captain, I'm reading massive atmospheric disturbance. Radiation levels they're off the charts." Through the main view screen, Lee Hyun-woo could see what remained of the planet. The green continents were brown and black now, covered in smoke that rose like funeral pyres. Bright orange scars marked where cities used to be, impact craters so large they were visible from orbit. "Dear God," whispered his communications officer, Ensign Kim Daeon. She was young, fresh out of the academy, and this was her first real deployment. What happened here? Before Lee Hyun-woo could answer, Commander Choi So-young's voice cut through. The comm system from the cruiser Busan. Her ship was running parallel to the Soul's Pride, and her sensors were painting the same horrible picture. "All ships, be advised. I'm picking up massive energy signatures on the dark side of the planet. Multiple contacts. Configuration unknown. They're big, and they're still active." Lee Hyun-woo felt his blood turn to ice. The attackers were still here. They hadn't just hit the colony and run. They were taking their time, making sure their work was complete. From the command ship Incheon, Admiral Park Ji-hoon's voice was quiet, but deadly serious. "They're still here. The bastards are still here, finishing what they started." Lee Hyun-woo pulled up the long-range scanner data on his personal display. What he saw made him grip the armrests of his captain's chair until his knuckles went white. 6 massive ships were moving in a slow, methodical pattern around the planet. Every few minutes, brilliant beams of energy would lance down from orbit, turning whatever remained of the cities into glass and ash. "Sir," Lieutenant Park Jin-woo said, his voice shaking slightly, "they're systematically hitting every population center. The scan shows they've already eliminated 17 cities. There are 3 more still showing faint life signs." But he didn't need to finish. Lee Hyun-woo could see the energy readings building on the alien ships. Those 3 cities had maybe minutes left. "How many people lived here?" Ensign Kim Daeon asked quietly. 4 million, Admiral Park's voice came through the comm. 4 million civilians, families, children, scientists. They were botanists for crying out loud. They studied plants. The bridge fell silent except for the steady beeping of the sensors. Lee Hyun-woo watched as another energy beam struck the planet's surface. Where a small town had been, there was now only a glowing crater. "Captain," his weapons officer, Lieutenant Yu Min-yuk, spoke up. "Those ships, they're not just attacking, they're hunting. Look at the pattern." He was right. The alien vessels weren't randomly destroying things. They were being methodical, surgical. They would scan an area, identify any remaining life signs, then eliminate them with precise strikes. It wasn't warfare, it was extermination. They're making sure no one survives to tell what happened here, Lee Hyun-woo said grimly. Another beam of light struck the planet. Another 1,000 lives snuffed out in an instant. "Sir," Lieutenant Park Jin-woo said, "the alien ships are moving to a new position. They've detected us." On the tactical display, the 6 massive vessels began to turn away from the planet, their weapons charging with energy signatures that made the human ships' weapons look like toys. Admiral Park's voice cut through the growing tension. "All ships, maintain formation. We're not leaving. Those monsters want to fight. Then that's exactly what they're going to get." Lee Hyun-woo looked at his crew, young faces filled with horror and growing anger. They'd come here to help, to save lives. Instead, they'd found genocide. Battle stations, he ordered quietly. The Soul's pride hummed to life around them, weapons powering up, shields raising. Throughout the fleet, 18 other human ships were doing the same thing. It was about to get very bloody. Admiral Yoon Dae-ho stared at the massive alien ships through the viewport of his flagship. Even after 30 years in the Terran Defense Force, he'd never seen vessels quite like these. They were enormous, easily 3 times the size of his largest cruiser, and covered in strange, angular armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His communications officer, Lieutenant Han Min-seok, looked up from his console with barely controlled anger. "Sir, we're still receiving faint distress signals from the planet's surface. There are survivors down there, hiding in the ruins." Yoon nodded grimly. The protocols were clear, even in a situation like this. Before any military action could be taken, they had to attempt peaceful contact. It didn't matter that these aliens had just committed genocide. Human law demanded they try diplomacy first. "Open a channel on all frequencies," he ordered. "Full translation matrix, active." Lieutenant Han Min-seok's fingers danced across his controls. "Channel open, sir. Broadcasting on all known communication bands." Yoon straightened his uniform and looked directly into the camera. His voice was calm and professional, the voice of someone who'd spent decades negotiating with hostile forces across the galaxy. "Unknown vessels, this is Admiral Yoon Dae-ho of the Terran Defense Force. You are currently engaged in hostile action against civilian populations. We demand that you immediately cease your attack and prepare for negotiations under Galactic Convention 47. He paused, giving the aliens time to respond. Around him, the bridge crew waited in tense silence. Captain Park Hyman from the tactical station was tracking the alien ship's movements, while Commander Seo Jiho monitored their weapon systems for any sign of aggressive action. "Sir," Lieutenant Han Min-seok reported, "no response on any channel. But I am detecting increased energy readings from their vessels." Before Yoon could respond, the universe exploded into violence. 3. Beams of pure energy erupted from the alien formation without warning. They were unlike anything in human military databases, not lasers or particle beams, but something that seemed to tear space itself apart. The weapons moved faster than thought, crossing the distance between the fleets in the blink of an eye. The frigate Daegu never had a chance. Lieutenant Nam Ji-won was 24 years old. She'd graduated top of her class from the Naval Academy, and had been excited about her first deep space assignment. Her parents had thrown her a party before she shipped out, proud of their daughter who was going to explore the stars. She had exactly 1.5 seconds to register the incoming energy beam before it hit her ship. The Daegu simply vanished. One moment it was there on Admiral Yoon's tactical display, broadcasting routine status updates and sensor readings. The next moment, there was nothing but expanding gas and twisted metal fragments spinning away into space. "Contact lost with D," Commander Seo Jiho shouted, his voice cracking with shock. "Sir, there's nothing left. The entire ship is just ... gone." Admiral Yoon felt something cold settle in his stomach. He'd been in combat before, had lost ships and crew members to enemy fire. But this was different. This wasn't a battle. It was an execution. The aliens hadn't even bothered to issue a warning or make demands. They'd simply erased a ship full of young sailors like they were swatting an insect. "Emergency maneuvers," he barked. "All ships scatter and take evasive action." The human fleet immediately broke formation as 2 more energy beams sliced through the space where they'd been clustered. Captain Lee Soo-young's destroyer barely avoided being vaporized, rolling hard to starboard as superheated plasma scorched her hull. "Sir," Lieutenant Han Min-seok called out, his face pale, I'm detecting multiple weapon locks from all 6 alien vessels. They're targeting every ship in our fleet simultaneously. Admiral Yoon looked at the tactical display, where red targeting indicators were lighting up like Christmas decorations. These aliens weren't interested in communication or negotiation. They weren't even interested in taking prisoners or gathering intelligence. They simply wanted every human in the system dead. All ships, this is Admiral Yoon, he announced, over the fleet-wide channel, his voice hard as steel. Forget the protocols. These things aren't interested in talking. Battle stations, all weapons free. Show these monsters what Deathworlders can do when you threaten innocent people. The gloves were off now. The aliens had made their choice when they vaporized the Daegu and everyone aboard her. Now they were going to learn why humans were feared across the galaxy. The moment Admiral Yoon gave the order, everything changed. Captain Shin Minho didn't wait for confirmation or additional instructions. His hands were already moving across the control panels of the destroyer Gwangju, pushing the engines to maximum burn as he dove straight toward the alien formation. "Sir, are you insane?" His tactical officer, Lieutenant Cho Sung-hoon, shouted over the alarm klaxons. "They just vaporized the Daegu in one shot." Shin Minho's jaw was set in a hard line as he watched the distance counter tick down. "That's exactly why we're not giving them time to aim properly. Evasive pattern, Delta 7, all weapons to bear on the lead ship." The Gwangju rolled and twisted through space like a dancer, her hull groaning under the stress of high-G maneuvers that would have killed an unprotected human. Behind him, Shin Minho could see the rest of the human fleet spreading out across the battlefield, each captain making the same calculation he was. The aliens were stronger, but they were predictable. They moved in perfect formation, their massive ships turning in wide, calculated arcs. Every weapon fired at precisely timed intervals. It was like watching a computer program execute its code. Commander Kong Yuna, aboard the cruiser Olsen, was the first to spot the weakness. Her ship was smaller and faster than the alien vessels, and she'd spent years training in the asteroid fields around Mars, while the enemy ships moved in their rigid formations. She dove into the nearby debris field, using chunks of destroyed planetoid as cover. "All ships, this is Olsen," her voice crackled over the comm. "These things fight like they're following a manual. They expect us to line up and trade shots like gentlemen duelists. Let's give them something they haven't programmed for." Her words sparked something in the other captains. Captain Oh Taijin, on the frigate Busan, immediately changed course, using the gravity well of a nearby moon to slingshot around behind the alien formation. Captain Lim So-yeon divided her squadron into 3 groups, approaching from different angles to split the enemy's fire. The aliens responded exactly as expected. Their formation tightened, weapons swiveling to track multiple targets. But their movements were still mechanical, calculated. They allocated firepower based on ship mass and threat assessment, not on tactical unpredictability. Shin Minho grinned fiercely as his destroyer screamed past the lead alien ship, pumping railgun rounds into its flank at point-blank range. The shots barely scratched the enemy's shields, but that wasn't the point. He was forcing them to react, to break their perfect formation. Commander Kang was right, he announced to his crew, as another alien beam weapon missed them by mere meters. "They are fighting by the book. Problem is, humans don't have a book." Across the battlefield, the human fleet was doing what humans did best, adapting on the fly. Captain Park Ji-young used her ship's cargo bay to launch improvised missiles made from spare parts and mining charges. Captain Kim Woo-jin coordinated with 2 other destroyers to create a crossfire that forced an alien ship to choose between taking hits or breaking formation. The aliens were stronger. Yes, their weapons were more powerful, their shields nearly impenetrable. But they fought like they were still dealing with the peaceful colonists they'd been slaughtering. They expected their enemies to either run away or die quickly. They weren't prepared for prey that fought back with the cunning of predators. Commander Kong Yuna darted between two asteroids, her ship's hull scraping against rock as enemy fire scorched the space where she'd been seconds before. All ships, pattern, Chaos 1. Make them choose targets faster than they can process. The human fleet exploded into seemingly random motion. Ships dove and climbed, rolled and spun, created false targeting signatures, and used debris as impromptu weapons. It looked like complete disorder, but there was method to the madness. Each captain knew exactly what the others were doing because they'd all trained together, fought together, learned to trust each other's instincts. They moved like a pack of wolves, each one covering the others, while seeking any opening in the enemy's defenses. The aliens, for the first time in their long history of conquest, found themselves confused. Their perfect formation began to crack as individual ships tried to track multiple fast-moving targets. And in space combat, confusion was often fatal. Captain Oh Sung-jin had boarded plenty of damaged ships during his 15 years in the Marines, but nothing had prepared him for this. The alien vessel's hull was split open like a cracked egg, atmosphere bleeding out into space through a dozen ruptures. Emergency lights cast everything in an eerie red glow that reminded him too much of blood. "Stay tight, people," he whispered into his helmet, "come," as his boarding team moved through the twisted corridors. "We don't know what we're dealing with yet." Sergeant Bae Naeong took point, her pulse rifle sweeping the shadows ahead. Behind her, Corporal Kim Dong-soo and Private Lee Yemin covered their flanks, while Specialist Yu Hannah worked on cracking the alien computer systems. The ship seemed empty. No crew, no resistance, just the hollow sound of their boots on metal decking. "Captain," Specialist Yu Hannah called softly, "I'm into their main computer. The translation software is working, but sir, you need to see this." Oh Sung-jin moved to where she was hunched over a glowing display panel. The alien text was flowing across the screen in neat, organized columns. As the computer translated each line, his blood grew colder. Species 247. Kepler colonists. Status: terminated. Population eliminated. 4.2 million. Method: orbital bombardment. Duration: 72 hours. Resistance: minimal. Specimens collected: 47. He scrolled down, hoping it was some kind of mistake. Instead, he found more entries. Species: 246. Centauri researcher's status: terminated. Population eliminated: 890,000. Method: atmospheric poisoning. Resistance: none. Specimens collected: 23. Species 245. Vegan trading collective status: terminated. Population eliminated: 15.7 million. Method: systematic hunting. Resistance: moderate. Specimens collected: 112. The list went on and on. Hundreds of species, billions of lives, all cataloged like inventory in a warehouse. Each entry contained detailed notes about the most efficient ways to kill different types of beings, written in the same clinical language someone might use to describe a manufacturing process. "How many entries are there?" "Oh," Sung-jin asked quietly. Specialist Yuhana's face was pale behind her helmet visor. "Over 400, sir. They've been doing this for ... God. Some of these entries go back thousands of years." Sergeant Bae voice crackled over the comm from deeper in the ship. "Captain, you need to get down to Cargo Bay 3, now." Oh Sung-jin followed the corridor toward her voice, his stomach churning with each step. When he reached the cargo bay, he understood why Bae Naeong had sounded so shaken. The room was filled with display cases, each one containing perfectly preserved specimens from the species these monsters had destroyed. But these weren't scientific samples or museum pieces. They were trophies. "Sir," Sergeant Bae Naeong said, her voice hollow and distant, "there are children here. Look at the labels." Oh, Sung-jin approached one of the cases, his hands trembling. Slightly. Inside was a small figure that might have been 7 or 8 years old, in human terms, from a species he didn't recognize. The placard beneath it read, Species 312, Juvenile Specimen, Last Survivor of Rigel Colony. Case after case contained the same horrible truth. These aliens didn't just kill entire civilizations, they kept souvenirs. The young ones, the innocent ones, preserved forever, as reminders of worlds that no longer existed. Captain, privately Yemen, called from across the bay. This case here. The species looks almost human. The label says they were called the Taotians. Oh, Sungjin walked over and felt his world shift. The beings in the case did look human, close enough that they could have been distant cousins. A family group, 2 adults and 3 children, their faces peaceful as if they were simply sleeping. Status, terminated. The placard read, Population, eliminated, 2.1 billion. Final survivors, displayed here, died, defending their young. Oh Sungjin closed his eyes, trying to process what he was seeing. When he opened them again, something had changed inside him. The military protocols, the rules of engagement, the careful procedures he'd followed his entire career, all of it felt like meaningless paperwork now. These weren't enemy soldiers or hostile aliens. They were exterminators. They killed entire species and kept parts of their victims as decorations. Sir? Sergeant Bei Naon was looking at him with concern. Your orders. Oh. Sungjin looked around the cargo bay one more time, at the hundreds of cases containing the last remnants of dead civilizations. His voice, when it came, was steady and cold. Signal the fleet. Tell them what we found here. Tell them exactly what we're fighting. He paused, still staring at the preserved family from Tau Ceti, and tell them the rules just changed. Captain. Oh Sungjin floated through the airlock of the damaged alien ship, his magnetic boots clanking against the metal deck as artificial gravity kicked in. The corridors were dark except for the flickering emergency lights that cast strange shadows on the walls. His boarding team moved behind him like ghosts, their weapons ready but their faces grim behind their helmet visors. This place gives me the creeps, muttered Corporal Kim Dong-soo, his voice crackling through the comm system. It's too quiet. Where is everyone? Sergeant Bei Naong was scanning the hallways with her detector. No life signs. Captain, me. Either they abandoned ship, or, ... double quotes. She didn't finish the sentence, but everyone understood. The humans had hit this vessel hard during the battle. Keep moving, Oh Sungjin ordered. We need to find their computer core. Command wants to know what we're dealing with. They moved deeper into the ship, past rooms filled with strange machinery and equipment they didn't recognize. The alien technology was advanced, but there was something cold about it. Something that felt wrong in ways Oh Sungjin couldn't put into words. Specialist U. Hannah found the computer terminal in what looked like the ship's command center. Got it, Captain? Their security is pretty basic once you know what you're looking for. Give me a few minutes to crack into their main database. While she worked, Oh Sungjin examined the bridge around him. Everything was oversized, built for beings much larger than humans. The chairs looked more like thrones, and the control panels were covered in symbols that hurt his eyes to look at directly. Sir, Johanna called softly, I'm in. But Captain, you're not going to like what I found. Oh, Sungjin moved to her shoulder and watched as alien text scrolled across the screen. The translation software was working overtime, converting the strange symbols into words he could understand. What he read made his stomach turn. The files were organized like a catalog, each entry describing a different species these aliens had encountered. But they weren't trade records or diplomatic reports. They were extermination logs. Kepler Colony, 4.2 million eliminated, he read aloud. Centauri Research Station, minus 890,000 eliminated. Vega Trade Hub to 15.7 million eliminated. The numbers kept climbing. Hundreds of entries, thousands of entries, each one representing an entire civilization wiped out. The aliens had been doing this for centuries, maybe longer. They moved from system to system like a plague, leaving nothing alive behind them. How many? Oh Sungjin asked quietly. Johanna's voice was shaking. Over 400 species, sir. Billions of people. They've been keeping detailed records of everyone they've killed. But the worst part wasn't the numbers. It was the clinical language, the cold efficiency of it all. These aliens wrote about genocide the way a farmer might write about harvesting crops. No emotion, no hesitation, just practical notes about the most effective ways to eliminate different types of life. Captain, Sergeant Bei Naong's voice came over the comm from deeper in the ship. You need to see Cargo Bay 7, now. Oh Sungjin followed her voice through the twisted corridors until he reached the cargo hold, when the doors slid open. He wished they hadn't. The room was filled with display cases, each one lit from within with a soft, golden light. Inside the cases were beings from dozens of different worlds, all perfectly preserved, all carefully labeled. But these weren't scientific specimens, they were trophies. Sir, Sergeant Bei Naong said, her voice hollow with horror. Look at the dates. Some of these cases go back hundreds of years. Oh Sungjin approached one of the displays and read the label underneath. Species 156. Final survivors from Proxima Colony. Age, approximately 7 years old, in their species life cycle. His hands started shaking. These monsters didn't just kill entire worlds. They kept souvenirs. The young ones, the children, preserved like insects in amber, to remind them of their victories. Case after case told the same story. Families that had tried to hide, children who had been found and taken, entire bloodlines ended and put on display like hunting trophies. Oh Sungjin closed his eyes and tried to control his breathing. When he opened them again, something inside him had shifted. The careful military protocols he'd followed his entire career suddenly seemed like meaningless paperwork. These weren't enemy soldiers or rival nations. These were monsters. And monsters didn't deserve the protections of civilized warfare. Signaled the fleet, he said quietly into his comm. Tell them what we found. Tell them exactly what kind of enemy we're fighting. The rules of engagement had just gone out the airlock. The message from Captain Oh Sungjin's boarding team hit the human fleet like a lightning bolt. Within minutes, every ship had received the transmission, the horrific images from the alien trophy room, the endless lists of dead civilizations, the preserved children from worlds that no longer existed. Admiral Yoon watched his tactical display in fascination and growing concern as the behavior of his ships began to change. The careful formation flying, the measured tactical maneuvers, the disciplined fire patterns, all of it was disappearing. In its place was something raw and primal that made his skin crawl. Sir, his communications officer reported, I'm getting scattered reports from across the fleet. Captains are requesting permission to, well sir, they're not following standard engagement protocols anymore. Before Admiral Yoon could respond, Captain Wan Taean's voice crackled over the fleet. Come, from the heavy cruiser This is Wan Taean. My engines are damaged and I can't maintain formation. Requesting permission to ram that big ugly ship that's been shooting at us. Captain Wan, negative on that request. Return to formation, and sorry Admiral, can't hear you. Having communication problems. On the tactical screen, Admiral Yoon watched in horror as the Mach-Po suddenly accelerated toward the largest alien vessel, her remaining engines pushing her far beyond safe operating limits. The cruiser's hull was already cracked and bleeding. Atmosphere. But Wan Taean didn't slow down. He's going to get himself killed, Admiral Yoon muttered. The alien dreadnought tried to bring its weapons to bear on the incoming human ship. But Wan Taean was flying like a madman, rolling and spinning to avoid the enemy fire. At the last second, He adjusted his course and slammed his ship directly into the alien vessel's shield generator array. The explosion lit up space like a small sun. When the glare faded, both ships were gone, but Admiral Yoon's sensors showed that the alien dreadnought's shields had collapsed completely, leaving it vulnerable to attack from the rest of the human fleet. Did he just ... Lieutenant Han Min-seok stared at his screen in disbelief. Before Admiral Yoon could process what had happened, another voice came over the comm. Commander Lim Chae-young from the destroyer Gangwon sounded completely calm, like she was discussing the weather. Admiral, this is Commander Lim. My reactor is showing instability from that last hit we took. I'm going to have to abandon ship. Right next to those 2 alien cruisers that are trying to flank us. Commander, return to safe distance immediately. We can arrange for... Sorry, sir. Reactor's going critical. All hands, this is the captain. Abandon ship. Abandon ship. Admiral Yoon watched helplessly as the Gangwon's crew pods ejected from the ship just before Lim Chae-young piloted her vessel directly between 2 alien cruisers. She held course until the very last second, then triggered a deliberate reactor overload. The explosion was even bigger than the first one, and when the debris cleared, both alien ships were drifting hulks. She turned herself into a bomb, his tactical officer whispered. She actually turned her ship into a weapon. Across the fleet, similar scenes were playing out. Human captains were abandoning every rule in the book, using tactics that would have horrified their academy instructors. They were ramming enemy ships, detonating their own vessels as weapons, using cargo containers as improvised missiles. Captain Park Seo-kyun jettisoned his ship's entire water supply, then used the expanding ice cloud as cover to get close enough to an alien vessel to punch through its hull with mining lasers. Captain Kwon Min-young coordinated with 3 other destroyers to literally tear an enemy ship apart, each human vessel grabbing a different section and pulling in opposite directions. Sir, his communications officer said quietly, I'm monitoring crew chatter across the fleet. They're talking about the children, sir. The preserved children from that alien ship. They're taking this personally now. Admiral Yoon understood. He'd seen the same images, read the same reports. These aliens weren't just enemy soldiers. They were exterminators who collected trophies from the civilizations they destroyed. And now the human crews knew it. The carefully trained naval officers were disappearing, replaced by something much older and more dangerous. These were the descendants of apex predators from a world that had tried to kill them every day for millions of years. They'd learned to survive by being ruthless, cunning, and absolutely relentless when protecting their own. Sir, his tactical officer reported, alien formation is breaking apart. They're not prepared for this kind of fighting. Their ships are designed for orderly battles, not ... whatever this is. Admiral Yoon watched as another human ship, the corvette Olsen, somehow managed to get inside an alien vessel's weapon range and began literally chewing through its hull with industrial cutting tools. This wasn't naval warfare anymore. This was what happened when you threatened the young of a species that had clawed its way to the top of the food chain. The aliens were about to learn why the galaxy called humans Deathworlders. The hyperspace jump signatures appeared on Admiral Yoon's tactical display like flowers blooming in fast motion. One by one, human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and immediately joined the battle. Word had spread through human space faster than official channels. Merchant vessels, patrol ships, even civilian transports had answered the call. Captain Song Min-jae arrived with a squadron of destroyers from the outer colonies, his ships moving in perfect formation, despite having traveled for days without sleep. His voice crackled over the emergency frequency as soon as his sensors painted the battlefield. This is Captain Song with the Colonial Defense Squadron. We received the transmission about the cargo hold. Are the reports accurate? Confirmed? Admiral Yoon replied grimly. trophy cases full of preserved children from every species they've exterminated. There was a long pause over the comm. Then Song's voice came back harder than steel. Understood, Admiral. Requesting permission to engage enemy scouts attempting to flee the system. Permission granted. No survivors. Captain Song's destroyers immediately broke formation and streaked toward 3 alien ships that were trying to escape toward the outer planets. The alien vessels were faster than individual human ships. But Song had something they didn't expect: pack tactics. His lead destroyer, the Jeju, drove the fleeing aliens toward an asteroid field, while his other ships, Busan and Incheon, circled around to cut off their escape route. When the aliens tried to turn and fight, they found themselves surrounded by human ships attacking from 3 different directions. Target their engines first, Song ordered over the squadron comm. I want them alive when we finish this. Meanwhile, on the other side of the battle, Captain Unsoman was stalking much bigger prey. Her heavy cruiser Daejin had been tracking a wounded alien battleship for 20 minutes, following its ion trail through a dense nebula that made sensors almost useless. Captain, her tactical officer whispered, contact bearing 27-Mark-15, range 8,000 kilometers. Through the swirling gas clouds, they could see the alien ship limping toward what it probably thought was safety. Its hull was cracked from earlier battles, atmosphere bleeding out in steady streams that glowed in the nebula's strange light. All weapons to bear, Captain On ordered quietly. Full spread, all tubes. I want that thing turned into scrap metal. The Daejeon's missile tubes opened like hungry mouths, spitting dozens of warheads into the nebula. The alien ship tried to maneuver, but its damaged engines couldn't generate enough thrust. The first missiles hit its rear sections, the explosions lighting up the gas cloud like a fireworks display. Keep firing, uncommanded as her ship moved closer. Don't stop until there's nothing left bigger than a coffee cup. Across the battlefield, the same scene was playing out over and over. Human ships that had arrived as individual vessels were now working together like they'd trained as a unit their whole lives. They shared targeting data, coordinated attacks, and covered each other's flanks with an instinctive understanding that went deeper than military training. The aliens, for the first time in their long history of conquest, were facing something they'd never encountered before. Every other species they'd exterminated had either fled or died quickly. None had fought back with this kind of organized fury. Their perfect formations, designed for crushing helpless victims, began to fall apart under the relentless human assault. Ships that had operated as a unified fleet for centuries suddenly found themselves isolated and surrounded by enemy vessels, attacking from impossible angles. Commander Jang Woo-jin's voice cut through the chaos of battle chatter from his corvette, Gwangju. He'd just finished destroying an alien supply ship and was already moving toward his next target. All ships, this is Woo-jin. I want everyone to remember what we saw in that cargo hold. Remember the children from 400 different worlds. Remember the families they kept as trophies. His voice was calm, almost conversational. But there was something underneath it that made Admiral Yoon's blood run cold. No survivors, Jen continued. No prisoners, no mercy. These things don't deserve to live in the same universe as the people they murdered. The human fleet responded with a roar of approval that nearly overloaded the comm system. Ship after ship acknowledged the order, their captains' voices filled with the same cold determination. The aliens had spent centuries perfecting the art of genocide. Now, they were about to discover what happened when their victims' cousins decided to return the favor. Admiral Yoon watched his tactical display as the last alien ships began to scatter in all directions, their formation completely broken, but there was nowhere to run. Human ships were everywhere now, hunting in packs, like the apex predators. Their species had always been. The exterminators were about to become extinct. The last alien ship was massive, easily twice the size of Admiral Yoon's flagship, and bristling with weapons that could have wiped out entire human colonies. But size didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that this ship was running, its engines straining to reach the hyperspace jump point before the human fleet could catch up. All ships, maintain pursuit formation, Admiral Yoon commanded from the bridge of his cruiser. Don't let that thing reach the jump coordinates. Captain Ko Hyjin's destroyer was running point. Her ship's engines pushed far beyond safe limits as she tried to stay ahead of the fleeing alien vessel. Admiral, this thing is fast. We're barely keeping pace, and my engine room is reporting critical overheating. Stay on it, Captain. We've got reinforcements coming. Behind them, 16 more human ships were spread out in a pursuit formation. That would have impressed any military academy instructor. They'd been chasing this alien command ship for 3 days now, jumping from system to system, never letting their prey get far enough ahead to disappear into hyperspace. Lieutenant Yang Dong-Yuk was hunched over his targeting console, his eyes red from staring at sensor readings for hours. Sir, I'm reading massive energy buildup in their rear sections. They're preparing to jump. All ships, emergency acceleration, Admiral Yoon barked. Don't let them escape. The human fleet surged forward like a pack of wolves closing in on wounded prey. Captain Ko's destroyer Pohang was shaking apart from the stress of maximum burn, but she held course. Captain Seo Jinwon's cruiser, Changwon, was trailing sparks from her overloaded power systems, but he kept pushing. One by one, the human ships reached the edge of their engineering limits and kept going anyway. The alien ship was just 200 kilometers from the jump point when something changed. Instead of continuing its desperate flight, the massive vessel suddenly decelerated and turned to face its pursuers. Sir, Lieutenant Yang reported, incoming transmission on all frequencies. It's the alien commander. Admiral Yoon straightened in his command chair. After 3 days of silent running, the aliens wanted to talk. Put it through. The voice that filled the bridge was deep and resonant, translated by the computer into perfect Korean. Human Commander, I request immediate cessation of hostilities. Under Galactic Convention 47, we offer complete surrender and full disclosure of our territorial boundaries, weapon specifications, and star charts covering 12 sectors. Admiral Yoon looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were exhausted, running on stimulants and pure determination. But when they heard the aliens' offer, something cold settled in their expressions. Sir, Captain Ko's voice came over the comm. My weapons are locked and ready. Just give the word. Lieutenant Yang was staring at his targeting display with an expression Admiral Yoon had never seen before. Torpedo tubes loaded, sir. All 17 ships reporting ready to fire. The alien commander continued broadcasting, his voice taking on an edge of desperation. We can provide technology beyond your current understanding. Medical knowledge that could extend human lifespans. Energy systems that would make your species the dominant power in this sector. Admiral Yoon thought about the cargo hold Captain Oh Sungjin had found. The preserved children from hundreds of different worlds, kept like hunting trophies by these monsters. The detailed records of genocide, written in the same tone someone might use to describe a shopping list. Admiral, Captain Ko was waiting for orders. Admiral Yoon activated his comm system to address the alien ship. Alien Commander, I have reviewed your offer of surrender. Excellent. We can arrange, however, Admiral Yoon continued, his voice growing colder with each word. You seem to be confused about something. This isn't a military engagement covered by galactic conventions. This is pest control. There was a long silence. Over the comm. All ships, Admiral Yoon announced to his fleet. You have seen the evidence of what these creatures did to 400 civilizations. You have seen the children they kept as trophies. I want their engines disabled first. Make sure they can't run. Captain Ko's voice came back immediately. Understood, Admiral. Target their propulsion systems. Then, Admiral Yoon continued, watching the tactical display as torpedo locks appeared on every human ship. We finish what they started when they decided to become exterminators. The alien commander's voice crackled over the "come" one last time, no longer offering bargains. Now it was just begging. Please. We surrender. We yield. Have mercy. Admiral Yoon's finger hovered over the firing control. You should have thought about mercy before you started collecting children. The first salvo from the human fleet lit up space like a constellation of angry stars. 17 ships fired simultaneously, their weapons perfectly coordinated after days of pursuit. The alien command ship's engines disappeared in brilliant explosions, leaving the massive vessel drifting helplessly in the darkness. Admiral Yoon watched the tactical display as his ships moved into position around their crippled prey. The alien vessel was still dangerous, its weapons were intact, and it was easily large enough to house thousands of crew members. But it wasn't going anywhere now. Sir, Lieutenant Yang reported, detecting movement in their launch bays. They're trying to deploy escape pods. All ships, target their pod bays, Admiral Yoon commanded without hesitation. Nothing leaves that ship. Captain Ko Hyjin's voice came over the comm from the destroyer Pohang. Confirmed hits on launch systems. No pods away, Admiral. The alien ship was trapped now, unable to flee or evacuate its crew. Admiral Yoon could imagine the panic spreading through its corridors as the creatures realized their situation. For centuries, they had been the hunters. Now they were learning what it felt like to be prey. Begin systematic destruction of all weapon systems, Admiral Yoon ordered. Section by section. Take your time. The human ships began their grim work with mechanical precision. They targeted each weapon mount individually, each shield generator, each sensor array. The alien command ship was being taken apart piece by piece, its crew helpless to stop the methodical dismantling of their vessel. Captain Seo Jinwan from the cruiser Changwon reported in, Admiral, their communication systems are down. They can't call for help or send distress signals. Good. Continue targeting their life support systems. The alien ship's hull began to split open in places as the humans concentrated their fire on critical systems. Atmosphere vented into space in white clouds that froze instantly in the vacuum. Emergency lights flickered and died as power systems failed one by one. Admiral Yoon felt no satisfaction watching the destruction. This wasn't victory, it was simply necessary. These creatures had murdered billions of innocent beings and kept parts of them as souvenirs. They had turned genocide into an art form, perfecting it over centuries of practice. Sir, his communications officer reported, the alien ship has gone completely dark. No power signatures, no life support, no emergency systems. Admiral Yoon nodded and activated his recording system. The after-action report would need to be filed with both Fleet Command and the Galactic Council. The politicians would want to know what had happened here, and why a human task force had destroyed an entire alien fleet without taking prisoners. Galactic Council Command. This is Admiral Yoon Daeho, commanding Task Force 7. Mission status: completed. Hostile alien fleet has been neutralized. Kepler colony survivors, 0. Enemy survivors, 0. He paused, looking out at the expanding field of debris that had once been ships capable of destroying entire civilizations. The metal fragments caught the light from the system's star, creating a strange, beautiful display that reminded him of a memorial garden. For the record, he continued, the enemy force was found to be engaged in systematic extermination activities. Evidence recovered from their vessels indicates they have conducted similar operations against over 400 sapient species across multiple sectors. Physical evidence included preserved specimens, taken as trophies from their victims. Admiral Yoon thought about the children Captain Oh Sung-jin had found, perfectly preserved in their display cases like insects in amber. The families that had died trying to protect their young. The civilizations that had been wiped out so completely that only trophy collections remained to prove they had ever existed. The Galactic Council was advised of the situation and chose not to intervene in a timely manner. When civilized species refuse to act against extinction-level threats, Deathworlders will respond with appropriate force. The message should be clear to any similar groups operating in this galaxy. Genocide will be met with total annihilation. No negotiations, no prisoners, no mercy. He looked around his bridge at the tired faces of his crew. They had done what needed to be done, but none of them looked happy about it. That was probably a good thing. The day humans started enjoying this kind of work was the day they became no better than the monsters they fought. This is Admiral Yoon, commanding Task Force 7. Mission complete. Returning to base. End transmission. As the human ships turned toward home, their engines leaving trails of light in the darkness, the debris field continued to expand. Soon it would be scattered across the entire system, a permanent reminder of what happened when predators finally met their match. The galaxy was a little safer tonight, but the cost had been measured in souls as much as lives.